During 2018 London Pride, a group of lesbians hijacked the parade, inserting themselves to the front and handing out flyers and waving banners. Their message? That trans people are erasing lesbians. So, alright, guess we're doing that then. Their flyers made 3 main points, 2 of them aimed at trans men and 1 of them at trans women. I'm only going to touch on the one relating to trans women briefly because I don't feel it's my place to go into too much depth, but I don't want to completely ignore it either. Trans politics promotes the rights of heterosexual men who identify as women and lesbians, despite most of them retaining their male genitals, over the rights of lesbians to choose their sexual partners. This new queer LGBT politics coerces lesbians to accept the penis as a female organ and promotes heterosexual intercourse between male and female as a form of lesbian sex. This is simply a new face to rape culture and enforced heterosexuality. First off, the one bit that they did get right. Yes, queer politics does indeed believe that trans women are women, and that any genitals that women have are women's genitals, which, ergo, does mean that it believes that some penises are women's penises. Everything after that point, though, bit of a leap. The idea that trans activists are trying to remove anyone's rights to choose their own sexual partners is absurd. Every trans activist that I have ever met or spoken to, and that is quite a lot, is an outspoken feminist, passionate about bodily autonomy. They may say that a lesbian who has declared that she will never have sex with a trans woman ever is being transphobic, and I will come back to the why in a bit, but I promise you, they are talking in the abstract, and are definitely not trying to get into this woman's pants. Outing yourself as a transphobe makes you instantly unattractive to trans people. There will have been an audible snap as that trans woman's legs slammed shut. If the conversation then continues past that point, it's a diplomatic outreach, not an attempt to get laid. Trans politics does not believe that someone who is repulsed by penises should be forced to sexually interact with one. It does take issue with anybody saying that they're not attracted to trans women if they are broadly attracted to women, because if you are attracted to women, sorry to break this to you, you have been attracted to trans women. People experience attraction before they know what that person's junk looks like, and not all trans people walk around wearing badges. You will have found many of us sexy and never even known it. No, trans politics takes issues with lesbians who exclude members of their own community for either being trans or dating someone who is. So, once more for the people in the back, no trans woman wants any woman to be coerced, required, or politically mandated to have sex with her. You appear to be thinking of incels for some reason. Now, moving on to the portions targeting trans men. Trans politics promotes the social transition of lesbians, encouraging them to present as straight men, thus favouring the pretense of heterosexuality over lesbianism. This is nothing other than conversion therapy. This is essentially the core of the TERF problem with trans men, this belief that all of us are just butch lesbians who have been conned by the patriarchy into believing that women can't be masculine and therefore we must be men. I have read several articles, seen several videos from TERFs, often quoting a Dutch study of trans youth that claims that 95% of trans men identified as lesbians before they transitioned. And I cannot express how incompatible this is with my actual lived experience. I am not, and have never considered myself to be, a lesbian. A lesbian is a woman who is attracted exclusively to other women. Now, even if you are one of the kinds of people who will insist that I'm a woman and therefore meet that criteria, surely all the sex I've been having with dudes would exclude me on those grounds, like before and after transition. I was bi then, I'm bi now, and I am not the outlier in this regard. The seemingly pervasive idea of trans people as a force for heteronormativity boggles my mind. I mean, have these people ever actually met any trans people, or have they just watched too much television? We are a phenomenally gay group of people. The average trans man of my acquaintance is wearing a flower crown and hoping that snogging this dude doesn't smear his eyeliner. Of course, some trans men did identify as lesbians before their transition. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, I'm just saying it's not the standard, it's not 95%. Trans politics is entirely 100% about self-identification. It is every bit as against pressuring a woman to transition because she's butch as it is pressuring someone not to transition because they're not butch enough. There is no shortage of butch lesbians who make me look like a flouncing Nancy boy, and more power to them. Presentation is not gender, and the irony is that you will nowhere find a group of people more avid about this fact than trans activists. We are on the same side, you abject group of idiots! The flyer's follow-up point is more of the same, essentially. Trans politics promotes the medical transition of lesbians and pushes harmful drugs, such as untested puberty blockers, as well as unnecessary medical practices, onto perfectly healthy bodies. These are a form of misogynist medical abuse against lesbians and all women. If by promotes you mean campaigns for people to have purely elective access to, then yeah, that's a thing we promote pretty hard. For a lot of trans people, these are medical interventions that we need to feel comfortable in our own bodies and to navigate the world with a reduced amount of harassment and misgendering. But yeah, you guessed it, we're back to self-identification again. You will struggle to find any group more vocal about a patient's right to guide their own medical experience as you will trans activists. Any level of pressure or coercion for a person to have a medical intervention that is not directly requested by them is unilaterally condemned by trans activists. Regarding puberty blockers, there has been testing, actually. Quite a lot of it. I'll put a link in the description to some information on the testing on puberty blockers. We continue to push for more research into the long-term effects of the medication given to trans people because we want the members of our community to be healthy and safe. Promoting more research just seems like a more proactive approach than denying healthcare to distressed adolescents, suicidal at the idea of being forced through a mismatched puberty. I remain confident that whatever side effects may exist to these medications, they're less bad than death. Suicide rates among trans people remain terrifyingly high, and that does have to remain the priority. Just the whole thing seems to hinge on this notion that queer trans politics are pressuring people to transition, which is straight up lies. All we want, all we push for, is access to the medical care that we need, and for people to stop actively discriminating against us and trying to insist that we don't exist. If all it took to coerce someone into transitioning is for trans people to be visible openly and publicly with pride, they didn't need much coercing. I'm not going to go into it in this video because this video is already running a lot longer than I like them to, but if you want to see coercion to change gender, you need to look no further than the shame and harassment that TERFs aim at trans people. I will put a link in the description to a post by the excellent Frank Williams about the experiences that he and people that he knows have had of being targeted by this behaviour, and I highly encourage you to read it. And aside from that, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll speak to you again soon.